In this video, I work on a car that I don't like. You're probably thinking, that's quite a harsh thing to say. This is a legendary C5. This is Cecily the C5. This is probably the most famous Citroën C5 in the world. Go on, name me a more famous one. I'll wait. No, you can't, can you? That's because no one bothers. I haven't bought this car. Ian drove this car down on the day that he picked up Betty, which is now not a secret anymore, and I can say it. So, yes, this is no longer Ian's car. This now belongs to another man. That other man isn't me. I would rather castrate myself with a dinner fork than own a Citroën C5 like this. That might sound mean, but that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. And that's the beautiful thing about opinions. Everyone else's are wrong. Is it a good car? Yeah. Yeah, I think it is. I think it's a good car. I can see why people like them. I have beef with a C5 in the way that it looks, basically, and in the way that it feels, and in the way that it doesn't do anything better than the car it replaced. The C5, of course, replaced, well, actually, technically replaced the Xantia and the XM. So it was a big car, this, and it was designed to replace both of those cars because apparently Citroën weren't going to do any more big Citroëns until the C6 came along. The reason I don't like the C5 is that it doesn't do anything better than a Xantia. Well, except for two things. There's two things better than a Xantia. Number one, in the estate version of the C5, there's a button in the boot that allows you to raise and lower the back suspension via a switch. So you don't have to walk round to the car to put the lever up to raise the car. It's good. And the second thing it does better than a Xantia is crash protection. If you crash a Citroën Xantia, it will probably terminate you. This, I don't think it would. I think you've got quite a good chance in this. The French were really getting to grips with safety when this car came out. And the beauty is, if you hit it hard enough, you'll improve the way it looks. Other than that, there's nothing more this does that a Xantia doesn't. It's got more space inside it, sure, but then it's gargantuan on the outside. That's why it's got space inside it. It's massive. It's like a huge whale. But this video is not about me. No, of course it is. Everything's about me. No, this video isn't about me. It's about the car. And I have to look at this more professionally, which is going to be a struggle. Basically, the car isn't owned by me, as I mentioned. It was driven down by Ian and Carly when they came to pick up Betty on that magic day, which was actually really cool. It was very cool, the day that Betty went home. Betty has since been spun into a ditch and is, as we speak, hopefully on the way to Ian's first social. But that's in Leeds, which is, I haven't checked if my passport's expired or not. I don't think I can go to Leeds. It's another country, without a doubt, miles away. So I'm in here on my own, working on this. I'm working on it for the guy who Ian sold it to, which is a good thing because the guy Ian sold it to is very enthusiastic about it. He's had them before. He likes them. He likes anything with chevrons on it, to be honest. He won't buy anything that doesn't have chevrons on it. He's like a BMW customer, but for Citroëns. So regardless of how good the car is, if it's got that badge, he'll buy it. And that's good for this car. That's an excellent thing for this car because already he has sent me loads of bits. There's loads of stuff. I've got loads of parts. We can do some unboxing videos on car parts. How cool is that? The less cool thing is that I have to do all the things that Ian said were wrong with it. And there's quite a bit. The front bumper is also a bit HubNut. But yeah, it's clutch, brakes, cam belt, water pump. Yeah, the usual stuff. I've driven the car a bit. It's actually okay. I mean, you know, for an Ian car, and Ian, people who know Ian will agree with me on this. It's actually rare to find one that doesn't have loads of faults on it. Hello, Ian. It actually drives quite well. It drives pretty straight. The suspension is soft. There's no knocks, there's no bangs. The gearbox works fine. The gear collar's a bit sticky on the lever, but I think that can be sorted pretty easily. clutch didn't even slip when I drove it. It does feel soft, and it's getting a little noisy, either the release bearing or the flywheel, which I'll come on to in a minute. But yeah, by and large, it actually drives quite well. So this is a good base, you know, if you're going to pretty it up. If you like the way these look, for the money, this is great. It's fantastic. There are people out there that like the way these look. Yeah. It might sound like I'm being harsh. People may be watching this thinking, why are you hating on this car so much? It's a love-hate thing. It's a Citroën with hydrodynamic suspension, therefore I don't hate any Citroën that has hydrodynamic suspension. They're all good. It's just the C5, what it should have been, and what it ended up being. This was the worst era for Citroën. This is the era where the accountants just had full control of everything that was going on. Everything was done because of cost, not because it was the coolest thing you could do or the most interesting thing you could do. All the engineers were most excited about it. C6 is an example of them going the other way. It's still a fairly mundane platform, the C6. Underneath, it is pretty much the same as a 407, a Peugeot 407. There's nothing particularly exciting about it, really. But the engineers were just allowed to go nuts, and with all the features and things it had, and all the little touches and all the little gadgets. And granted, that's a more expensive car than this, but they could have done more with this. I mean, you look at the C5 that followed it. I'm not a huge fan of them. I think they're called the X7. I'm not a massive fan of those C5s because I think they're trying too hard to be something else. They're trying to be Audis or something like that. And I think, well, I don't want it to be an Audi. I want it to be a Citroën. That's why you buy one. But the majority of the public don't think like that. Majority of the public think, oh, there's an Audi. I'll buy that. Even if it's a turd with 4 wheels, it's got an Audi badge on it. It must be good. I'll buy that and my neighbours will think I'm cool. I think that's what Citroën were doing. But the thing is, you aren't going to get that with the Citroën because the Citroën isn't cool in the first place. The Audi has the prestige and the badge kudos among people who aren't really into cars to carry it off. A Citroën doesn't. Hence why Citroën have ditched that idea. And now they've got their DS brand, which is just... But yeah, so what the car should have been and what the car ended up being, two different things. I can't quite forgive it for that. Also, the first one of these I drove was a V6 facelift estate. So this is the early shape. They did a facelift with slightly different headlights and changed one or two other things. And that had a V6 engine in it with the same automatic gearbox that my C6 has, I think. And that really should have been good because it had the hydractive suspension, even though this car has hydractive. Look, Citroën hydractive. Look at that. It doesn't actually have hydractive. It's just, yeah, it's a bit confusing. With the C5 V6 that I drove and had in for a mate, you know, that should have been peak C5. That was everything the C5 had to give. And it was absolute garbage. Honestly, it was woeful. It was the worst hydraulic Citroën hydromatic Citroën, sorry, that I've driven. It was absolute cack. It wasn't fast. It was thirsty. Didn't sound great because it was all muted. I know that engine sounds good, but God, they managed to suck all the life out of it. It didn't ride that well, and it got too confused all the time. The suspension was trying to do too many different things. It was rubbish, and that soiled my kind of first impression. Compare this car to that one. Bearing in mind that was like a 55 plate, so that's 2005 for those who aren't in the UK. It was a 55 plate, facelift, blah, blah, blah. It had all the toys. This is a much older, probably slightly higher mileage, Bogo diesel, right? This is a better car. This makes more sense. This doesn't have the computers trying to do all the clever stuff. It does have computers, but it doesn't have the extra computers like a C6 does. But by the time the C6 came along, I think they got it right. This is just much more basic. It's as close to a Xantia without hydractive as you can get. And for that reason, this actually works better. I don't think you can hustle this along. Cars like the BX, CX, XM, C6, you can hit a country lane, a winding country lane, and although it's one of these weird things where you drive them down there and you don't feel like you're trying hard, you're not breaking out a sweat, but you are going down them quite fast. There's no drama. So it kind of makes it feel like it's not a driver's car and it's not a fast car. It feels like a slow car, but you catch everybody up. And you think, well, I'm moving along all right. Well, this will do it. It's a bit more ungainly. It's really like, I'm a little unhappy doing this. I'll do it if you really want me to. Whereas the C6, I mean, it barely even leans in corners. It's an up and down thing, isn't it? I think up and down. See? Good name for a channel, that. I think the plan with this car is I'm going to do my best by it. It's actually here as a customer's car technically, but he has said, well, because everyone knows it, let's chuck it out there as well. And yeah, it'd be good to sort of look around it, see what it's like underneath. It's quite, for someone who's into Citroens, it is kind of interesting to see this because if you've been underneath the C6 or something from that generation, or BX, this is a kind of halfway house of the two. It's a really kind of strange. It uses the anti-roll bars to do the height correction, just like a BX does. But the height correction is determined by sensors. The BX isn't. The BX is determined by valves that are gummy on my car. This is this is an interesting thing. It's McPherson strut at the front, trailing arm at the back, just like you'd get on a Xantia, but it's electronically controlled. So the car will raise and lower itself electronically. The engine in the car, as you probably know because you've watched Ian's videos, is under here. And there's a bonnet release, and I don't know where it is. Oh, there it is. Right. There you go. So the engine in the car is the 2-litre HDI. It's known as the DW. It was a DW family of engines. They did a DW10, which is a 2-litre, and they did a DW12, which was a 2.2. You know, it's a good engine. It's a good engine. This is the first batch of HDIs that came out. They put them into the Xantias first. It was Citroën Peugeot's first common rail diesel. They are available in 90 horsepower and 110 horsepower formats. The latter had an intercooler, which this pipe is connected to. So if you've got this pipe here, you've got a 110. If you don't have that pipe, you don't have a 110. Easy as. I had the 90 in a Picasso, in a ratty old Picasso family wagon that we had. It was a good engine. It was a really good engine. And once they actually had a remap carried out on it. Well, carried out. I bought it online and uploaded it, with a laptop. It drove really well after that. This one drives well. This is a 110, so this is a bit pokier to start with. 110 horsepower. I would guess, I'm going to take a shot in the dark here, tune. I'm going to guess that is around about 180 pound-foot of torque, I would think. And it's a big, heavy car. It moves all right. It goes all right. For what it is, it goes okay. It's a really good engine. It pulls fairly well low down, but really it's quite a simple engine. And this will pull from lower revs than an old XUD type of diesel engine. It's got more grunt than the XUD. Even the 90 horsepower, it's smoother, it's quieter. You can tune them. The economy is better in these. I'm not one of these people who can drive one of the 1.9 TD Xantias and get these 55 miles per gallon fuel economy returns that people go on about. I just don't see it. I don't where these come from. I've no idea. I think in a BX, which is a 1.8, not a 1.7. Yeah, you could probably touch 50 on a run. You could probably do 50, but I don't get it with the others, especially with the 1.9s. These you will easily get 50s per gallon out of that on a run. You don't have to, you can sit there at 70 or thereabout. It will do 45, 50, 55 in that region without having to try. So that's good. Now the difference, or one of the differences between the 90 and the 110, we'll forget the 2.2 for the minute, which was available in C5s, but apparently struggles to beat about 35 to the gallon. So, yeah, one of the differences between them, aside from this pipe and the intercooler, which is under here and is buried in oil, is the gearbox, or rather the flywheel with the clutch on drives the gearbox. The flywheel on the 90 horsepower models was, now correct me if I'm wrong here, leave it in the comments, I'm sure you will. The 90 horsepower version was a single mass flywheel. The 110 has a dual mass flywheel. A dual mass flywheel, for those who don't know, effectively means you've got a flywheel on the end of the engine, and rather than it being a solid lump of metal, it's two solid lumps of metal, which are sandwiched by a kind of damper. And over time, that damper wears, and you get a lot of play between the two, and you get rattles and all sorts of unpleasantness. And although this car doesn't have that, it's one of the things. This is probably the original clutch in this car. We'll find out when it comes out. But although this car doesn't have the dual mass flywheel problems, it's a common thing to convert it to a single mass. You can use a conversion kit, which we've got. There are two schools of thought. Some people say you have to keep it dual mass, and some people say no, go single mass. Why would you keep dual? Well, Dual mesh flywheels are there really, especially on diesels. They help with loadings, so that it will dampen everything that goes on between the engine and the gearbox. It takes the strain, the mechanical stress, if you like, out of the connection there, and also that in turn can take some of the mechanical strain out of the ancillaries that run off the engine, because of course every time you come on and off the throttle, that backlash, if you come off the throttle and your engine braking, you've got reverse torque going back up the drive shaft, back up through the gearbox, back up through the engine, and it works in reverse. It's kind of like it's pulling it the other way. And that flywheel does a fair bit to help dampen that out. Much like when the first sprung clutch plates came out, when you had springs in a clutch, it was the same sort of thing. A lot of cars have dual mesh flywheels. Petrols, we've got a car with a petrol engine that's got a dual mesh flywheel. It's probably never going to need one because the petrols don't have the vibrations. Every time you switch a diesel engine off, you watch it shake in the engine bay. So, yeah, there are reasons why they have them. You'd think to yourself, well, then why would you change it? It's there for a reason. Citroën's engineers know better than you do. Why would you change it? A very fair question. However, the 90s have a single mass flywheel, and it is largely the same engine with largely the same ancillaries. And the 110 Xantias, and I'm guessing 406s that use the engine, the 110 Citroën Xantias had a single mass flywheel. Now, I'm sure there's a reason why they would go to the effort of putting the dual mass into the C5. It could just be because one of the other models used it and they had it and thought, well, that will make the 110 feel nicer than the 90 on the test drive for people who want to, choosing between one or the other. Thus, they will pick the more expensive 110, possibly. Or it could be there is a mechanical reason for it. But being that a number of people have retrofitted single mass flywheels to this engine, I see no reason not to. So, mind you, it's not my car, so if it breaks, it's not my problem. Now, I have already made a start working on this car by removing some of the inner plastic trim that covered things like the battery. And this needed much special attention to remove. I had to do this. Nothing was secured down. So we've got bits of trim. So underneath this engine bay, there is a lot of stuff. And much of it sits above where the gearbox is, which is a pain because I need to remove the gearbox. I used to be of the mindset that if you're doing the clutch and the timing belt on an engine, you'd take the engine out because it was just easier to do. Oh my God, the top suspension strut mount is rusty. Ooh. I used to be of the mindset that, you would remove the engine if you were doing the big two. So if you're doing cam belt and clutch, you'd remove the engine. Well, I've changed my mind because I've looked at this engine and I don't want to. So the access to the cam belt is actually okay. I think largely when I've got a bit of space here, when we've removed some bits and bobs, I think the access is going to be okay. Gearbox, yeah, well, it is what it is. That's going to be probably a bit more work. But as with any job, first thing to do, remove the battery. And in this case, it's just two quick release clamps. And I think this design of battery clamp is designed to, yeah, look at that. You can get the battery out without any tools. Scrap metal merchants would love it. Battery be gone. So the next thing after that would be the airbox. My hair keeps getting in my eyes. I've elected not to cut it. I'm not quite sure why. Everything in this engine bay, nothing is secured down, so there's like loose wiring. Nothing's sat in its clip. I can't see the logic in that. So yeah, it's going to be air intake and airbox and everything out next. And this job will take quite a long time to do. And you think, well, a book time on a Citroën C5 clutch is blah, blah, blah. Well, book times mean nothing. They mean something to garages who pay their mechanics a wage based on the job they've done and the number of book hours in it, and then the mechanic will race to get it done quicker than the book time and get the money for it without having to actually put in that many hours, meaning they can do another job and they earn even more money. And that is the problem with the motor trade, because people don't, they do jobs based on the book time and getting paid per job, people will rush the job. And jobs like this, you don't want to rush. And oh, these do not want to come off. Yeah, the best thing to do with a job like this, which you've never done, if you've never done it, And funnily enough, I've never done the clutch on a Citroën C5. Oh my god, that's spring loaded. Yeah, the way to do it is to take your time, photograph things, don't rush it, don't be afraid to stop, check it out. It is not all about time. There's this obsession with getting things done in a certain time. Everyone wants everything done quickly, and you think, that's not the way to do it. You can do it quickly or you can do it well. If you do it well, it will take a bit longer, but the car will be better for it. Oh my god, this is... I've never known Jubilee clips that were that badly stuck. Yeah, you wanted tinkering, you got tinkering. But yes, it doesn't hurt to go the extra mile. If you were to look at the instructions on how to do a clutch on a Citroën C5, there will probably be areas of it I don't actually need to remove, but I'm going to, just because if it makes it easier. And I'm not being funny, but when you've got cars like this, cars that are this age, that have got rubber hoses stuck, there you go. And I think to myself, well, you could just take that off and put it back on, but this is now going to be someone's, well, effectively this is going to be someone's pride and joy. And although you might laugh at that, because I certainly did. No, it's not fair. If it's someone's pride and joy, it doesn't matter what it is. You've got, there's far too much snobbery in the car world, and it doesn't matter what it is. If it's someone's pride and joy, if they love it, then the best thing you can do is work on it like it's your own car. And if this was my car, I'd be taking this hose off because I'd want to know if it was full of oil. Although, in a way, I don't want to know if it's full of oil. If this is my car, I'm thinking, I don't want to know. I've now gone cool dude to stop this hair getting in my eyes. Well, I could just get a haircut. Yeah, I could, but I cut my own hair and I really can't be bothered. So, yeah, if this pipe's full of oil, it means the turbo is not happy. Oh, God. This has probably never been off. There you go. There's a bit of oil in there. You will see a bit, so I'm not going to be too worried. Oh, there's a nice cable tie holding that on. Excellent. This is going to be a very chilled, very leisurely approach to doing a clutch. I'm going to eke this content out over many videos. Wow, that is some cable tie. There we go. I'm going to get my money's worth out of this.